The compound door hasn't opened yet, but inside, Rangers are already stacking. Suppressed weapons, absolute silence, then the breach charge detonates and everything goes loud simultaneously. Taliban fighters, booby-trapped rooms, compounds rigged to fight back. Fortified walls breached in seconds, high-value targets eliminated before they heard the breach charge blow.
I got one guy down! Get down! I need a medic inside! I got one guy down! Big time!
What you are about to see is 5 compound raids so violent, precise, so caught on camera that the footage alone rewrote what the world understood about direct action warfare. These are the moments the 75th Ranger Regiment turned darkness into a weapon and concrete into rubble. October 19, 2001. Inside a classified planning cell, a single order rewrites everything. Less than 7 days before launch, the insertion method for the opening kinetic strike of the War on Terror flips from helicopter assault to parachute drop. Commanders of the 3rd Ranger Battalion scramble. Equipment loads change. Jump manifests rebuild from scratch. Every timeline compresses. Under total secrecy, no leaks tolerated. Colonel Joseph Votel's planners had days to absorb the change, re-rehearse it, and lock 199 Rangers onto 4 MC-130 combat Talons without a single compromising whisper escaping the compound. The pivot happened. The birds loaded. Now came the part nobody walks away from easily, the jump itself. 4 MC-130 combat Talons cross into Afghan airspace at 800 feet. Inside, 109 Rangers are standing, hooked up, red light burning. The ground below is black. The jump masters call it green light. 199 men push out the doors into nothing. At 800 feet, a parachute malfunction is not a problem they solve. They have roughly 4 seconds before the ground decides for them. Every Ranger on those birds knows that. They exit anyway. Canopies crack open. The drop zone rushes up. Boots hit Afghan soil, the first American combat parachute assault since Panama in 1989, and the opening kinetic blow of an entire war. But 99 Rangers didn't land on a cold, empty field. Before the first boot left that aircraft, something had already been done to that compound, something the enemy never saw coming. Hours earlier, a B-2 Spirit, invisible to every radar the Taliban had, released precision munitions onto objective Rhino from altitude. The crew never saw the target with their own eyes. The target never saw them at all. Then the AC-130s moved in, orbiting slow, low, patient. FLIR cameras locked onto heat signatures, crossing the compound perimeter. Fighters trying to run. The 40mm rounds found them anyway. Footage released post-mission shows figures scattering, then stopping. Enemy KIAs confirmed before a single American touched the ground. The objective was pre-broken, resistance already fractured. That is the door. The B-2 opened, but a broken door still has to be walked through. A company hits the ground moving. Objectives: TIN and IRON fall fast. Doors breached, rooms cleared, near zero resistance. The B-2s and AC-130s did their work. What's left inside those structures isn't a fighting force, it's furniture. Then C Company turns toward Sealbalt. The walled compound is darker, tighter, more defensible. Rangers stack at the breach point. The charge blows. The wall comes apart. They're inside before the dust settles, flashlights cutting through the black. What they find changes everything. A weapons cache, cataloged, photographed, confirmed. 3 objectives cleared, walls breached, cache destroyed. That is the opening of 7,195 consecutive days of Ranger combat operations. Not with a ceremony, but with a breaching charge and a smoking weapons room. Operation Rhino was destruction with a purpose, but the next raid turned that purpose into a nightmare because the enemy had already buried it underground. October 5, 2013, Kandahar Airfield, pre-mission. Intelligence has confirmed the man inside. That compound is the operational leader of a cell actively planning a mass casualty attack on Kandahar City. JSOC wants him dead or in flex cuffs before he can execute. SSG Jeffrey Dawson, EOD technician attached to the 75th Ranger Regiment Assault Force, boards the bird with the chalk. Target compound, designated NAI-1, sits inside a known IED dense corridor. Everyone knows the ground is seeded. What nobody knows is how deep the belt runs or how many triggers are waiting. The helicopters lift from KAF and disappear into the dark. The compound is isolated. The assault force is moving, and the enemy is ready. The eastern gate is 40 meters away when the ground moves. The pressure plate detonates without warning, a wall of overpressure that throws Rangers sideways. Before the dust settles, the compound gate swings open. A woman steps through it. She is already triggering. The suicide vest detonates in the same breath. 8 Rangers down in under 10 seconds. 2 enemy dead. The entire approach corridor is now a casualty collection point. That is the before-after line. No training cycle truly prepares you for the moment a raid becomes a survival problem. Sergeant First Class Dawson pushes through ringing ears and the copper smell of blood and takes account of who is still standing. He is the only EOD asset on the objective. The belt is still live. The compound is still unsecured. What he does next will define every step the Rangers take from here. Dawson doesn't wait for the order to be repeated. He already has frag in his inner thigh. The suicide vest punched metal into him when she detonated, and he is moving anyway, down on his hands and knees, probe working the dirt ahead of him inch by inch. 30 feet of active belt between the casualty collection point and any viable extraction route. Then 1 LT. Moreno steps wrong. The ground takes him. Dawson keeps clearing. G. Hawkins, gone. SPC Patterson, gone. 3 Rangers killed in sequential strikes while Dawson works the lane, bleeding, alone. The only man on that objective who understands what the ground is hiding. He finishes the lane. The corridor holds. The wounded move through it. That is what keeping men alive actually costs. When the last casualty moved through Dawson's cleared lane, the objective fell silent in the worst way, not victory quiet, but the kind that follows catastrophe. The final count, 3 Rangers killed. 1 LT Moreno, Skate Hawkins, SPC Patterson, each taken by sequential IED detonations inside the belt. 1 military working dog killed. 8 friendlies wounded, Dawson among them, frag still in his thigh when the corridor finally held. The Army's Silver Star citation for SSG, Jeffrey Dawson doesn't use the word heroic lightly. It documents what combat footage shows in fragments. 1 EOD technician, alone, wounded, clearing lethal ground while his brothers died around him, refusing to stop until the lane was open. That is the Kandahar IED belt. But the next Rangers were about to walk into something larger. Fortified compounds, cave networks, and 200 Al-Qaeda fighters with no intention of running. March 2002, Shah-e-Kot Valley, Paktia Province. The largest combined conventional and special operations battle of the Afghan war, and the 75th Ranger Regiment is walking straight into it. Intelligence put 105 to 200 Al-Qaeda fighters dug into fortified compounds and cave complexes along the valley floor and ridgelines. These weren't fleeing men. They'd been there for months, stockpiling ammunition, reinforcing walls, mapping fields of fire. Colonel Frank Wiercinski's task force enveloped from the high ground. Rangers from 1st Battalion, 75th, were task organized for something dirtier, clearing the lower compound network directly while coalition forces squeezed from above. The squeeze was designed to push fighters down, into the Rangers. That was the Shah-e-Kot objective. What happened next, on a frozen ridgeline at 10,000 feet, would become the regiment's most brutal single engagement of the entire battle. March 4th, 2002. A downed MH-47 Chinook sits smoldering on Takur Gar's frozen summit. Navy SEAL Neil Roberts is already dead. A rescue force needs to go back up that mountain. Rangers from 1st Battalion, 75th insert into a kill zone at nearly 10,000 feet. Al-Qaeda fighters with PKM machine guns and RPGs hold the high ground, looking straight down the landing zone. Captain Nathan Self's chalk takes fire before the rotors clear the ridge. Ranger Sergeant Phillips Fitak is killed at the ramp. 2 more Rangers go down in the opening seconds. Self's element fights uphill where every breath burns for hours. The highest altitude direct action engagement the regiment had ever run. The valley floor is quiet, but every compound is a fortress. Over 17 days, Ranger elements from 1st Battalion move systematically through the Shah-e-Kot, breaching walls, clearing rooms, and demolishing tunnel entrances that Al-Qaeda fighters had spent months reinforcing. The numbers in the after-action reports are staggering. Multiple weapons caches destroyed in place, tunnel networks collapsed with demolition charges. CENTCOM's confirmed end state, an estimated 500 Al-Qaeda fighters either killed or displaced from the valley permanently. These weren't quick snatch operations. Rangers were fighting at altitude against an enemy that had chosen this ground deliberately and prepared it for exactly this kind of battle. The structure was gone. The network was broken. That is the clearance record of Operation Anaconda. The proof was already in the sky. AC-130 Spectre gunships and Predator drones had been orbiting the Shah-e-Kot for days. FLIR sensors locked onto every compound Ranger elements pushed through. When ground teams called for fires, the footage captured exactly what followed. 40mm rounds walking across rooftops, 105mm howitzer shells turning reinforced mud brick walls into billowing white-hot dust clouds. Portions of that footage were later declassified. You can watch the walls collapse in real time. You can see secondary explosions where weapons caches cooked off beneath the rubble. That is the visual record of Operation Anaconda, not just numbers in an after-action report, but destruction measurable frame by frame. What Rangers pulled off in the Shah-e-Kot was devastating, but a network operating out of the Haditha corridor forced them to build an entirely different kind of kill chain. By 2006, Al-Qaeda in Iraq wasn't fighting from ridgelines. They were hiding inside civilian infrastructure across Anbar province, and dismantling them required something more surgical. The Haditha corridor was a kill factory. JSOC analysts, piecing together signals intercepts, captured documents, and source reporting, built a targeting package unlike anything from Afghanistan. This wasn't one HVT in one compound. It was a living network, couriers moving cash between safe houses, bomb makers rigging entrances, a finance node funding every IED cell in the corridor. Rangers from 1st Battalion's 75th Regiment received the sequential destruction objective, hit the courier node, collapsed the supply line, moved to the bomb maker, then the financier, killed the whole organism. That was the architecture of the Haditha network strike, and the first breach was hours away. The network map was built. The target package was loaded. Now, Rangers move. 2006, Haditha Corridor. Rangers from 1st Battalion hit the first node before the courier inside knows the perimeter is broken. Breaching charges blow the reinforced gate, and the stack flows through smoke and dust before debris stops falling. JSOC raid logs document what they found. IED, precursor chemicals, copper wire, pressure plates staged for emplacement. Materials for dozens of devices already assembled. When a structure couldn't be safely cleared, demolition charges went in. The building came down. Compound after compound, same sequence. Breach, clear, seize, destroy. Hard numbers accumulate fast. Multiple enemy KIA per objective. Cache after cache cataloged and detonated. But one cache was different. What Rangers pulled from the ground that night didn't just end one cell. It reversed the entire war for Haditha. Components for over 40 IEDs, pressure plates, homemade explosives, detonation wire coiled and waiting. Enough material to seed an entire corridor for months. Staff sergeant level assault team leaders on the objective immediately recognized what they were looking at. This wasn't a storage cache, this was the next wave. Rangers pulled it from the ground, cataloged every component, and detonated what couldn't leave. The Anbar SIGOCT data tells the rest of the story without sentiment. IED events across the Haditha corridor dropped measurably in the weeks following that single night's work. One network that stops functioning. That is the reversal, not just a compound destroyed, but a campaign ended before it started. When the supporting rotary wing element's optics roll across the Haditha compound minutes after Rangers clear it, what you see is not a building anymore. The perimeter walls are breached. Then the secondary explosions begin. The IED cache Rangers couldn't extract detonates in sequence, each blast confirming what assault teams already knew on the ground. DoD cleared that footage for release. It exists. It is verified. That visual record, wall breaches, structural collapse, secondary detonations from a network-level cache is precisely what places the Haditha network strike above every earlier entry on this countdown. But the raid you're about to see next didn't hit one compound, it hit 3 simultaneously. (2011). The surge is at its peak. JSOC analysts have spent weeks mapping a Taliban command and control node operating not from one compound, but 3. Adjacent walls, shared fighters, interconnected communications running attack cells across the entire district. Every previous raid hit a single gate, a single wall, a single objective. Taliban commanders had learned to exploit exactly that. One breach means squirters flood the adjacent compound and vanish. Colonel Eric Kurilla's task force tears that playbook apart. Objective: Mashal doesn't sequence 3 compounds. It hits all 3 simultaneously. Every wall breached at the same second, every exit covered before the first charge detonates. But planning a simultaneous 3-compound breach and actually executing it are 2 completely different things. The moment the lead chalk reaches the first compound, every other element is already in position. Rangers pressed against mud brick walls in the dark, breaching charges set, not a single trigger pulled yet. Lieutenant Colonel Kurilla's synchronization window is measured in seconds. Then every charge detonates at once. The ISR feed captures it. 3 simultaneous flashes tearing through 3 separate walls across a 200-meter objective, white smoke blooming on FLIR like a punctuation mark. Helmet cam footage shows Rangers flooding through the breach before the dust clears. Every squirter lane the Taliban relied on is already owned before a single fighter can run. That is the breach the Taliban had no answer for. The breaches are blown, every exit is owned. Now the killing starts. Inside the central compound, Taliban fighters don't surrender. They barricade into rooms, stack behind doorways, and wait. Rangers go in anyway. The helmet cam footage doesn't glamorize it. Tight corridors, muzzle flash, smoke. Staff Sergeant level Ranger citations from 2011, Homan Operations document exactly this. Sustained close quarters exchange of fire, Rangers pressing through active resistance room after room until the compound goes quiet. When the last room clears, the accounting begins. Enemy KIAs confirmed inside the wire. A Taliban communications hub, radios, documents, encryption materials, an IED manufacturing cell, components, triggers, initiators, all cataloged and destroyed in a single engagement. One night, an entire cell network dismantled, but the Rangers aren't finished measuring what Objective Mashal actually cost the Taliban. ISAF battle damage assessors logged it clinically. 3 compounds structurally destroyed or rendered permanently unusable. Every wall breached, room cleared, every structure demolished by Ranger demolition charges or collapsed under its own ruin. Then the cache detonation. Rangers place the charge, pull back, and the FLIR feed goes white. Secondary explosions ripple across the screen, IED components cooking off, the Taliban's next month of operations burning in a single sustained sequence. But the deepest measure isn't structural. ISAF analysts tracking Taliban attack frequencies logged a confirmed, measurable drop in coordinated strikes across the district after Objective Mashal. The C2 node didn't just go quiet, its silence echoed outward. That destruction metric, tallied against every raid on this countdown, is exactly why Objective Mashal sits where it does. Stack every metric against every raid on this countdown. Rhino opened the war, but cleared light resistance. Anaconda destroyed cave networks over 17 days. Haditha dismantled a single corridor cell. Even the Kandahar IED belt, brutal as it was, cost Rangers as much as it cost the enemy. Objective: Mashal cost the Taliban everything in one night. Simultaneous breach across 3 compounds, the highest single-raid enemy KIA count of any Ranger compound raid, with released combat footage. A cache detonation that erased a month of Taliban operations in seconds. Helmet cam and FLIR footage, extensive enough that the destruction speaks for itself, frame by frame. Colonel Eric Kurilla's task force didn't just hit a target. They erased a node. If what the Rangers did to Mullah Omar's compound and what came after in that Kunar Valley didn't settle it for you, then answer this. Was the most devastating raid the one that opened the war, or the one that finally broke the network that kept it going? Drop your answer below.